Yo, I'm back for part 3, and before we get into the new concepts, I'm gonna get into a few things I missed from the last video. So one of the things I forgot to talk about when I was talking about EVing was that, for example, if you have like a Tapu Lele versus an Urshifu, you can, for example, outspeed Adamant Urshifu and live Jolly. If you put yourself in those like win-win situations as a builder, it's like very rewarding. So my next point is about like accomplishing a certain goal in an interesting way. I kind of just forgot to put this footage in the last video, so I'll just let it speak for itself. Another thing I recommend for people is to look at all the tools that a mon has to like accomplish a certain thing. So let's take a look at like SMU, for example. You know, the standard set is like NP, fucking fake out, psychic, overheat or whatever. I don't know. But like, think about, okay, what if I like put Calm Mind over NP, because maybe this in the long run gives me fucking better matches for special attackers, you know? Think about like these small things that actually have like ripple effects when it comes to like, oh, I'm actually taking 30% from this Primarina Moonblast instead of fucking like 53 or whatever, you know? That's, you know, just some random example I made up that actually makes no sense, but still, dude, like, think about, oh, actually, that does make sense, because if Prima is spamming sub on you, I don't think NP wins that, but CM can definitely, just muscle past that shit, because you can just keep spamming CM, and then eventually you're gonna, like, psychic them on a turn that they attack you and not sub, and then you just see movement from there. Very cool example I just made up in my head. I'm so proud of myself. Shoutouts to Ape711 and Gohar for the thumbnails and game footage respectively. Big ups to them. It helped these videos come out faster and better. I appreciate it so much. So in this video we're talking about lures, counter teaming, like tournament mindset for teams, and set ambiguity. Hope you guys enjoy. Don't forget to drop a like and a sub. Helps me out, man, and comment if you have any questions. Okay, so what a lure is kind of obvious. It's just, you know, I said on a Pokemon designed to be something that it doesn't normally beat, and something that your opponent kind of falls for and gets lured into losing with. So, I mean, in 1v1, games don't really win themselves a lot of the time. You kind of have to put yourself in the driver's seat to actually win. So, there's like very good tangible benefits to like having lures on your team, even if they don't, you know, work out in game necessarily. And like building with lures is definitely a step to farming kids, really.
My thesis on a lure. I think a lure is the definition is if it catches your opponent off guard, if he doesn't expect it, and it doesn't have to be a super. That means it doesn't have to be like a super niche set that nobody ever has seen, or like a TV spread or whatever item change. If the opponent is some noob that knows only like 2 sets and you catch him off guard with something that's just slightly less standard, I think that's still a lure. Now lures are just like most of the things in Pokemon or in like general games with strategy, just optimizations, like expected value, it's called in poker. What can you gain by having the thing, and what is your percentage, like how high do you think they will fall for it? What is the chance they fall for it, they bring them on, whatever. Usually a lot of players have predictable like either team building or they just use the same teams, so that's why lures are really effective in 1v1. Like harder players usually don't fall for them, or they're harder to even like catch them off guard because they can just bring a different mod, and then you can't really go with these like crazy off the beaten path lures that only beat like a few mods but lose to like 60% more. There you gotta be building more standardized, and I'm a person that has like felt for just keeping the lure thing going even with his good players. That's where most of my losses actually come from. Just making, just going all in on like technically worse sets, and then I have a terrible matchup where I just get 3-0'd. Yeah.
So,
like for example, LT, I guess LT finals is a good example of that. Last one, but that's Sword Shield.
Yeah, and versus like good players, I would kind of recommend to run like these like less or like low risk high reward lures, like maybe like a good mon with like a certain like tweak to where it can still fucking like beat shit otherwise. It doesn't like depend on X lure to like win games. Like for example, an Oras.
Yeah,
I mean, you can even still run this in SM.
I have a different approach to it because I think most people, as I said, the team building is a problem to most people, and they're either lazy or at least when I played, and especially in SM, you can make the advantage of SM is the set can be like much more creative than in any other gen. So you can experiment and make like one mon beat a few things that you never could before, and like those things are what your opponent uses. That's why I spammed. I think I'm one of the players that uses the lures the most, especially in SM. But as I said, like if they switch it up, it's you should go to like safer options. But I think you should still try to lure them if you don't lose much by it, because everybody like brings some mons again. Yeah. Nobody like. Yeah.
Because some people are like required to run like either certain glue mons because of like, hey, they don't want to lose to Dragonite, they don't want to lose to Charizard, you know, they don't want to lose to, I don't know, Lele, for example.
Yeah, and the case with these like more standardized lures, they're not even like, you're not even losing that much if they don't bring that mon. You can catch something else off guard. And so, also one thing I'd like to add, I'm sorry, is using lures on mons that are good and have like a lot of sets is very nice, because you can get a good percentage of wins just by them thinking you don't lose to a certain thing, because the mons that are good usually beat a lot of stuff, right? So even if you get 3-0 or preview, they might not click it, or they might be scared and click something else. And on that note, I'll also add to like to add that what was I gonna? Yeah, you don't have to lure. You don't have to make your team lose to that mon. Basically, center your team around just beating one mon or luring one mon. Those teams are not usually that good in my experience. Like if you're going out of your way to make that happen, you're banking all in on that one single thing, and that's usually not how you should do it. Unless it's like a more centralized meta game, and like the people must have like insane usage, and maybe then it's worth it. Like Sableye luring Revali in OS.
Yeah. So you want to make it so maybe it's not like this lure is like the only way you have any sort of possibility of beating like X good mon, because at that point like it can be kind of predictable if it's like, oh wow, this person has 3 mons that lose to the best mon in the metagame. Like I wonder if there's a lure there, you know. Like some people do lose to the best mons.
Yeah, that's another thing. Yeah.
And I prefer like certain optimizations where you know, it's actually not like the biggest deal if you don't fight the thing you're trying to lure. For example, like Brick Break Zard and Oras, I think is fantastic because not only do you like auto win versus most Heatran and T-Tar teams, but like you're still a fucking Zardex with DD Flare Blitz Outrage at the end of the day. LRXC has this one fucking Zard and Oras where it's like counter bulldoze, and even if you don't fight a Heatran, you still have all this HP and all this defense for counter, and counter Zard is a fucking menace, dude.
Yeah, obviously if you have more utility to that, it's better.
And stuff like Zygarde, In like any gen, really, Zygarde can kind of like just do whatever the fuck it wants, you know. The Bikini can
Or
do
like
whatever the fuck it
Greninja.
wants. Yeah, Greninja can do whatever the fuck it wants. You know, there's a lot of mons where they have so much opportunity to just kind of beat whatever the fuck they want with like not a lot of effort. Like
That's what I love Greninja.
yeah.
Uh,
Greninja's move pool is insane. I remember TDA like made a Greninja that like beats Jolly Lopunny. It was insane.
yeah, that sounds insane. Or like, yeah, you can use so many moves like Shadow Sneak, the rock moves, poison,
HP
fucking
Steel,
grass, being good.
HP Electric,
Yeah.
HP Ground, you know, whatever the fuck. Honestly,
I
extra
use
sensory is
like
really good.
probably like 30 different moves.
Yeah,
on
HP
it.
Flying is good on Greninja too.
Or just aerialized band.
Yeah, and I remember when I felt like a genius when Toxic Greninja was beating stuff on Torrent because I was like, hey, I don't need this or that.
Rocky helmet. There's so much you can do with it.
Yeah.
But yeah, I also think that you don't have to like attack a person's building. One other thing you can do with lures is there's a popular metagame trend that's rising, and people are like catching on and using the mon that's currently broken. Usually in like developing tiers when it's not the end of the meta, and there's a lot of mons like that when people find out like broken sets. Because there's a lot of examples of that in SM. You can just target that thing and innovate yourself and make something cool that beats it. Like, for example, I successfully lured land on a bit laser focus mega Lari. Laser focus Meloetta was really popular, and in finals, one season that I played, remember Metagrosses and Magirnas were all the rage, and I made the Firium Nag and Adele set that also worked out as well. So you can just do that too. It doesn't have to be like counter teaming only.
Yeah, and I want to kind of extend that by saying like, it doesn't really have to be in a developing metagame. Like for example, in Oras, like when people start using a bunch of Haban Kirin Blacks, you can say like, hey dude, I actually want to make my, you know, Charizard beat Haban Kirin Black, or I want to beat or have my like other random dragon type beat Haban Berry Kirin Black, and then you can run stuff like Unnerve Haxorus to kind of try to match up fish. Those type of teams where it's like, hey, they rely on Haban Kirin Black to beat dragons. So yeah, be very aware of like meta trends, because they happen in
another good example is Xenite, and we like Icium Pheromosa, and like even fling Garchomp if you're feeling it with King's Rock to break the multi-scale, and a bunch of others. Basically Icium mons. Yeah, we can continue.
And yeah, and another thing that's a little separate is that when you're making a lure, you want to be aware of like how your opponent is going to play in this matchup. For example, I remember when Milan showed me Facade Mega Pinsir in Oras. I'm like, dude, that works great because a Sableye is always gonna want to fucking burn a Pinsir. You know, Pinsir.
Yeah, obviously. That's more to like creating the lure. Yeah. That's how you create a lure.
And I was like calculating some shit today. I'm pretty sure if the Sableye stays irregular and Metal Bursts, it actually beats Facade. But I mean, that's not a play that anyone is ever gonna fucking make. Like, sometimes you can't cover every single fucking option. All you gotta do,
and you shouldn't.
Yeah, you shouldn't. I mean, there's some lures where
even with rolls, you should have like a limit. Sometimes you can like pass an 80% roll if that's good enough. And when it comes to building lures, I think it's important not to get lazy with your EVs. All my lures usually have like 4 or 5 EV slots, like three at least, because especially when you're creating it, you don't wanna lose the things that the mon should like generally be, and sometimes you need like a good EV spread for that, or like a smart move, smart last move, stuff like that. Maybe even an item if you're like itemless, but that's rare.
Yeah, make sure your lure actually beats the shit that you want it to. Dude, I was playing a random.
It's not a rule.
Yeah.
Okay, I don't think it's like 100%. I'm of opinion that you can lose to it if he gives you, because there's a funny thing, because you beat it right on preview, so you gain that advantage, but you get the advantage of the lure too, beating other stuff. So it's fun. It's like a mind game, essentially, another mind game on top of it. But yeah.
I wanted to add that I was playing an Elo Bandit OS tour, and I like randomly, like I had like no teams. I was like playing on my phone or something, and so I like made a Brick Break Zard team, and it was like 252 Brick Break Zard, and then I just didn't beat a Heatran. Like I just fucking lost. Like it was like
that
so
can happen
retarded.
too. Yeah.
So it was like
yeah.
that was just an example of me being on the phone and not caring, but like it was like so fucking stupid. I'm like, wow, I'm a fucking.
Yeah, you can be
dumbass.
just cocky and think, okay, this just beats it, and then you'd actually lose because
Yeah.
you forget that Mon is like bulky or whatever.
Cover the scenarios in your head of like, okay, so this happens, this happens. Yeah, calc. And think about scenarios. Sometimes, like, for example, like Kaban Kieran Black and Oras, it can kind of cover, like, anything a Zard wants to do. It doesn't care about sub, it doesn't care about DD, it doesn't care about raw outrage. You just rock tomb outrage or rock tomb outrage. It's, you know, that type of set can easily cover every single play that a Zard wants to make. It doesn't care about, you know, random belly jump, doesn't care about wisp, but sometimes you can't cover every fucking scenario, and in that case, all you really need to do is cover like the situations that a human would actually do. You know, no Sableye is gonna regular metal burst. It's fucking nonsense. Like, yeah. Because a lot of people try to take a 3-0 and just run with it. They're like, oh, this Pincer team loses to Sableye. I'm just gonna fucking mega and just get my 3-0, and then like, you know, they get lured.
Yeah, I think that happened to all of us. But more like centralized metas, I've noticed like I use less. Well, maybe that's the meta, but like I don't focus much on like without one lure beating like multiple things like in as medics, because you really can't. And like OS, it's not that much creativity when it comes to like moves, items. Well, there is decent amount compared to like shit like ADV, but compared to SM, no. So I just use more like standardized sets and then focus on like luring one thing or two max, or like generally lower than in SM. In SM, I find like some crazy mon that can lure like multiple things I'm trying to like counter team, because in SM you can do that. You can like stretch one mon out to like beat like 5 or 6 things. It's literally stupid. But when it comes to Greninja, it's like that.
Because there's like certain Z moves are just like ridiculously strong when you actually like hit the calc, and you're like, wow, dude, this like Z hyper beam is like actually strong as shit, you know, because it's like 200 power.
Or doing the contrary, if someone is so good with Z move, sometimes like Scarf or Specs is brilliant lure, like in case of Lele.
Yeah.
No, everybody expects the Z because it's so good.
Yeah, think about like how people are reacting to a certain mon. If, for example, like I don't know if this is actually how people play around Lele, but say, you know, Lele or Meloetta are kind of, or like, I guess more so Lele, if you like Z move on a sub, you're usually like really behind in that game, and it's like you probably lose if you like Z set a sub, for example, because it means they're not getting the like fucking +5 gazillion defense.
Yeah,
or whatever.
not only they don't they can also misplay that way with the lure set. That's true. That's very true.
So think about like, you know, if people are like using a bunch of like sub shits to you know, be Lele, then think about, you know, Scarf for Specs, or I don't know, just maybe, you know, I don't know, cussed up Lele. Like I feel like, you know that cussed up Lele is a thing in SS, but probably not in SM for a good fucking reason. That cussed up sucks in SM. But I mean, you can make cussed up work in SM, like if you have like a really small idea.
Cast up is its own beast. Like I use that item so much in every tier. Yeah. That's like prime time for like making lures work, especially in like older gens. It enables so much within the
berries are broken.
It's not possible.
Like cuss tap is insane, because if your opponent is expecting to hit you once, and then, or if they're expecting to get hit by you once and then you hit them twice, they fucking lose probably. Like if it's in a really specific situation. And like, you know, resist berries are also crazy as well. They can just like fucking be like a deciding factor in a matchup. If, you know, they do 100 50 max, and then they start doing 75, you know, with a strong ass move.
Yeah, they're definitely
or
helpful.
whatever, yeah.
Especially the gens with like no Z moves. But I also think you should keep up with the metagame trends, what people are using. Another example of this is like a Bandit Donphan or an Avalug, where like lures up and coming. Nobody knew about them in the first, like, I don't know, sometime, maybe like few weeks, a month. But then people caught on to it, and it was actually like more expected, and in the end even turned into be like standard sets, the most expected.
The anti-meta becomes the meta in a lot
if you were lagging, you wouldn't know that, and that would change your whole perspective.
And that's kind of, I mean, the word optimization I've said a bunch of times, and it's kind of a cringe word because it's like, you know, fucking like a lab nerd thing. But if you really think about like Bandit Donphan, it's like, hey,
that's what it is,
Z Donphan has like a bunch of issues because, you know, you can't really have Groundium and Rockium at the same time when you kind of want both, and then, you know, your non-Z moves are going to be weak as actual penis.
Also, a big thing of it is Gunk Shot. Like, Bandit Gunk Shot, all those
Bandit Gunk Shot smacks, like, half any given meta. Like, and
there's so many theories.
Bandit Donphan is that, it started in SM, and then people kind of started using it in ORAS, because, like, ORAS Donphan pre-banned, it was kind of a meme. It ran, like, that funny, sub Citrus Endeavor Ice Shard shit, sometimes. That like that unironically beat Gyarados.
Never used that.
I did. It was funny for luring Gyarados. As fuck.
It beats, yeah. I saw it beat some like funny things. I just never use it.
Yeah.
But yeah.
And okay, so my next question is, when do you think a lure is like not worth doing? Like, have you ever like been like midway through a lure and you're like, this is just not?
Okay, I'm a bad person to be asked this question, because I just don't care. I just like playing. I just like playing with lures even when it's not a good idea, or like statistically it's not worth it, or it's like just overall just a dumb idea, as I said. Because it's just fun to me. I like using weird sets. I like catching people off guard. I like using cool mons. It's just this game is like fun. We're not playing for like real money, or nothing is like actual on the table. So yeah, but if you are trying to win like super hard and you don't care, obviously don't go overboard. But yeah, I'm a bad person.
And you're the person who I'd say has like the most unrevealed lures and techs like ever.
Definitely, I think that's the one thing.
Because
I don't give people
haven't seen like 80% of your just like sets that you run that are just complete fucking nonsense.
Yeah, the good thing about that is you can reuse them.
Yeah.
Like, you remember, if you don't have a huge builder like me.
Yeah. For example, once you told me about Specs Clef, I used that for like 6 months on my teams. It was like my go-to glue, because I kept playing these teams where I'm like, wow, dude, Specs Clef fulfills this thing where
I think people. Yeah, I think people haven't seen my shit like Z Lightspeed Magirna and some other shit. Let me think. Like Endeavor Diane's. Like, there's a lot of examples. I never even like clicked or shown. Like even AV Zygarde. I had like, but I could never lure something because I was just getting unlucky and like not catching the things that we wanted. But like Landon used that recently.
Yeah, it's funny when you have a lure, and then you're like, oh shit, I thought like this is like a 2-1 matchup, like this lure doesn't like completely beat them, but it has a good matchup, and then they go into like another thing like you easily beat, for example. So if we're thinking about like AV Zygarde, say like, oh shit, I'm gonna catch a Greninja, and then they just click like, I don't know, a fucking like Victini or something, and then it's like, wow, I didn't even have to fucking show this shit, dude. That's stupid.
Yeah.
Why do I even try? When my opponent can just be dumb. But yeah. So I would say when you're making a lure set, you should be thinking, okay, like, what am I losing by making this set? And then you should like go and, you know, look at your opponent's usage, look at like the meta, like maybe the VR or however you choose to like visualize the meta, and you can like think about like, okay, am I like genuinely losing a lot by making this lure? Because a lot of lures, in like SS specifically, you can kind of just like tweak one move in like your EVs, and then like you kind of still beat the shit that you wanted to beat, and then you can like keep fucking having like matchups. Like for example, I don't know, like Specs Tapu Fini. You're still a fucking Tapu Fini at the end of the day. You still have the Tapu Fini stats. You still have the Tapu Fini moves. You still have the Tapu Fini, like Misty Surge. Or, well, Specs probably runs Telepathy because of rest, but you can run like Specs Misty Surge if you want. Like, there's benefits to that because, you know, your opponent's going to expect you to taunt them, then you hit them for 50 damage. So yeah, think about, like, you know, like
Telepathy as well.
Finny runs Telepathy in SS because they run like stupid Trick Rest shit.
I didn't know you can use those abilities.
Yeah, they got released. I think this gen, maybe. I don't know if they were allowed last gen. I have genuinely no idea.
No, they weren't. 100%. But yeah, TLDR is making lures is really fun, and it can be like super profitable, but probably don't get like too lost into it. And just like play what's comfortable for you, or like just what's fun for you. Maybe you don't like, maybe you like using standard teams, that's fine. But lures can be like, I don't know anybody that just uses like complete standard team. I think besides Ecstatic, but he also like switched it up when he won a lot. He wasn't using the same, like, also his diversity wise, that's a good point that is brought. He's using lures, most likely than not you're using different mons every time, which just makes you less susceptible to getting counter team.
Yeah, like literally the only player that like I can think of that like only uses standard and like won like a good amount of turns is like Squirtle. And then even then, like last PL he brought like, I don't know, it was like Diggersby, Keldeo, Salazzle or something while down 0-2. It was fucking ridiculous, dude.
No, I think he still does. No, I think he's diversified. He just doesn't use crazy lures.
No, he has a diverse usage, which is like annoying to fight. And yeah, keep your opponent's usage in mind when you're making lures, because like maybe you thought of like, oh wow, I finally realized that I can make this mon beat that mon, and then you try to like bring it, and then your opponent is not like the type of person that would actually either fall for that or you know, bring the shit that, you know, you actually beat. For example, if your opponent never uses Heatran or T-Tar and Oris, and there's no fucking point in using Brick Break Zard, you know, or whatever.
Yeah, this is more a point about like counter teaming, but don't just look at usage and be lazy, because there's a lot of times people use stuff like 1 year ago, 2 years ago in that usage thing that they will not bring again.
Yeah.
So you're accounting for something that probably like way less percentage or way more, depending.
Yeah, and speaking of like your opponents, think about how your opponent is gonna react to your like potential lure, because you know, if your opponent is the type to like, you know, just insta click like, oh, my Heatran 3-0s, that's sick, then you know, take your fucking dub. But if your opponent is like the type to sit there and like go down to like 120 seconds every fucking game, you know, maybe this like extremely obvious lure you made might not like work as well as you think, you know, whatever.
Yeah, that's like more like philosophy of playing too, and just like the timer thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, we can like add lures to that, I guess.
Yeah, because like a lot of lures, people like to think, they like to call out because people like to think they're like the best set guessers of all time. So if they like think that you're one set,
yeah, okay, sorry.
Go ahead.
Yeah, this is an important thing as well. If you have like, let's say one lure on your team, or like one half or whatever, this is like your mon, you put so much time in. If it looks good in the match, don't like just like click it because it's your lure. Like still play the best, still do the conk, still think like the fact that that's a lure has nothing to do with where you're gonna click in that time, unless you literally like 3-0s, and unless like you're luring something so well that they're gonna click that thing that your team loses to or something like that. Still like take everything into account. Don't be just like, okay, this is my lure, I'm gonna click it. I've seen people do that, and
no, there's certain players that 100% of the time click their quirky set because it's a quirky set, and haha 1v1 is funny. Like, you know, that's
or do the opposite and never click it, but that's more rare.
Yeah,
should be the balance of two.
Most people think they like to click the quirky shit, like, you know, maybe you know, their
like
cool
90%.
Sceptile set, they'll fucking click their cool Sceptile set because, oh, it's a Sceptile, bro. That's my starter. You know, whatever.
Yeah. Should we give some more examples, maybe, or did we give enough?
I would probably say we can give examples of like how to start a lure. So let's just say, you know, if a certain one in like SM, for example, is like a Z move, maybe you want to give it like Specs or Scarf or whatever, or Band like Milan said earlier, and then you know, resist berries are sick, weakness policy is sick, Rocky Helmet is sick, and I'm looking over my sub Pataya Genesect now. That's like another set that like kind of beats something the way that it is played, because you know, Mawile versus Genesect, they're gonna Metal Burst you. So even though sub, like if they fucking like, I don't know, play rough you turn 1, that's annoying as fuck. I don't know if it breaks your sub, but you know, if they like play rough you turn 1 and then it breaks your sub, then you know, you can think like, oh shit, my set doesn't actually lure. But dude, they're just gonna click Metal Burst or Sucker Punch. Like that's all. That's the only plays that they can be making. So cover that if you can.
Yeah, I think you already mentioned something like that. Yeah, just a good idea.
Think about like, you know, a Mon accomplishing its goal in a different way than it usually does. Because, you know, like something like Specs Victini, you know, it's still a Victini, it still wants to OHKO and 2KO shit, but by adding Specs, you're gaining so many matchups that you wouldn't normally be with, I don't know, Band or whatever. So.
I remember changing a sample team. No, I think I made a team that beats like samples, like mid SM, because I know my opponent was gonna only bring samples, and it was like 7 samples, and I Specs Victini beat like 3 or 4 of them alone. I basically could have just like beat the entire sample lineup with one team.
Yeah.
Yeah, Specs Victini is nice.
Yeah, call out your opponent for their tendencies. If they're gonna use samples, you know, call them fucking out. Don't just bring random teams that like are totally like oblivious to that and just kind of get like neutral matchups or whatever. Because samples kits are the easiest to beat. Yeah, just make it easier to win, because kind of having lures of common meta shit and like being the type of person who will, you know, lure common meta shit, you're gonna get your lures eventually, bro. Like they're gonna happen. You know, maybe not every single lure you create, but you know, you'll stumble into one at some point for sure.
With anything, don't get tilted if the lure doesn't work.
Yeah, and sometimes you'll click the lure and then your opponent won't click the thing that gets lured
by
it.
The worst thing is like it lures it and you beat it and then your opponent just hacks you. That's like the worst thing. Like it doesn't happen a lot, at least to me.
Yeah, no, because
usually they don't even you turn 1 if the lure like kills them instantly. Bullshit.
And honestly, something. So okay, say your like weakness policy Victini is up against a like, I don't know, this like I'm trying to think of something that just beats it every time. Okay, this is like an actually like extremely autistic example, but like I'm just gonna make this because it like kind of like makes sense in my head.
We don't judge autism.
Yeah, so if you're fighting an Archeops with a Victini, don't just click skill swap because, oh, you know, I'm gonna click skill swap. Like that just doesn't make any sense. If it doesn't make sense to click it, like don't reveal your shit, because that's like a future lure that could work in the actual future. Don't like reveal. If you have a 0% chance to win, then don't reveal your shit just because.
For sure.
Like.
For sure, or just forfeit turn 1. That's what if you like any move will reveal your set. I forfeit turn 1.
Yeah, if it's like Specs Victini.
If you have 0 chance to win, always forfeit.
Yeah, but I mean, like even if you're running like Specs Victini versus Terrakion, I don't know, click Psychic, I guess. I suppose you should click Psychic because, you know, Terrakion has very like Stone Edge is a bad move, bro. Like that shit just misses.
No. I'm only saying if there's like 0 chance.
Yeah, like literally 0%.
Yeah, if there's like even 1%,
like you have to like dodge 8 consecutive toxics or whatever, or I don't know, something like that. Then it's fine. But yeah,
yeah, if it's like below, like if it's like 0.001, okay, sure, but yeah, Meteor has to strike them.
Yeah, so I'd say overall, you should be thinking about like those big lures that can like, destroy a fucking Zygarde with Zeraora. Or you could just think about these small lures, like, certain EV and move changes, like Brick Break Zard, for example. I know there's a lot in SS you can do with just like these small move changes and EV changes, because EVs is a great place to start when it comes to that type of thing. Do not neglect EVs on a lure, because you can honestly lure stuff with just your EVs and nothing else. If you if you make your shit like way bulkier than it needs, or than it is usually, then that can like be enough a lot of the time.
Okay, another thing quickly before I say one more thing. You can use like same teams, use the same team that people know, and just like switch up the sets, and you can lure people that way too. That's another way. But
yeah.
I was gonna say, oh fuck, I forgot. Okay, you can continue. I'll just remember while you talk.
Yeah, but I was gonna say like, if there's like a team that like a lot of like top players are using that's just kind of getting passed around, you can take it as a base and be like, okay, this has a good foundation, and then maybe you can change like whatever you want. Like I remember Evelurb took my Specs Kieran Black AV Lando T team and like made it like Specs Lando T Kaban Kieran Black, which like he made the team worse, but if everyone knows that team,
make him win. Yeah, it's just like
the idea is there.
If it like helps him, if like if this version is better versus this opponent, but overall it's worse, yeah, you should use that version, obviously.
Yeah.
I'm saying. But I was gonna say, I remember surprisingly, like when building, we're creating lures, making lury teams. The most important things is like take your time and try to be creative, and just think outside of the box and talk a lot of stuff. See what works, what doesn't.
Yeah, think about like, okay, this mon can feasibly beat this mon. Like, say for example, Zygarde has like a bunch of ways that it can theoretically beat Greninja, but maybe like Sock in like Black White. Is it worth luring Sableye with Sock? I don't really think so. Like, you probably need like 4 moves and like good RNG to do that.
Again, not gonna input on that. I was like, literally that's beyond.
No, I remember you learned Mega Sableye, but like learning regular Sableye in Black White, I don't even genuinely think that's possible.
What if your opponent just brings? Okay, yeah, if it's in, yeah, obvious. That's what you're saying. Okay, yeah, if it's like not feasible, don't even try it. But sometimes you'd be surprised with what you can learn with like
especially with
something
Z-moves,
you
especially
never
with
expect.
berries, especially with Custard.
Yeah.
Those items.
Or just like weird items set.
Yeah.
Like fucking Z-Pack Mamo beating Heracross.
Mhm. And like,
how would you know? Like, there's no way you would like.
There's
You need to
literally
look at the
zero way
rule
to
set.
expect Mamo to beat Heracross. That's impossible, unless it's Z-Pack. But like, they're not gonna hard read your Z-Pack at preview. That's just not how people work.
Also, like, Dicey in the HP ground guard beating Zone is another example.
And
So
also
it's kind of
think about like, the tournament pressure. Like in certain scenarios, like a lot of people are gonna try to get that win for their team, so they're gonna click them on that gets lured. Think about like the actual environment that people play in instead of like a fictional one where they're gonna call out every lure you have ever made just because your opponent's actually good. If you're finding a player better than you, fucking lure them, dude. Like, that's honestly one of the best ways to win.
I think of that more when the game starts, because it's also depending on what's the score, what's this, like how did the series start off.
Yeah, for sure.
And like, I don't know, the score during the week, if it's a team tour, stuff like that.
See, I think I'm out of stuff to say.
Yeah, same. I can only mention like different lures, but we mentioned enough, I'd say.
Okay, so that is that. Just be creative. Don't go too far. If you're trying to make a sock that beats like Sableye, just realize like any other fighting type with guts is like infinitely better. So yeah, think about like this lure is not as good as another Pokemon's lure because another Pokemon has like attributes to make it way easier. So yeah, that's all I gotta say.
Me too.
Okay, Cteaming is something that is kind of expected from players these days, and you know they can try their best, but at a top level, some people low-key struggle to Cteam because you know the players like Bomb21 kind of farm people, even though they're actually ridiculously easy to Cteam if you just sit down and say, hey, I'm gonna try to like really get these matchups versus, you know, Roserade or whatever, you know. So yeah, I'm gonna take you guys through that. So I'm gonna be kind of assuming that you sometimes do have your imports of your opponent's teams, and maybe sometimes you don't. But I'm gonna like take a look at either situation here. So here's some tips for Cteaming. You should pay attention to two things are the biggest thing, in my opinion. How I do it. This is my guide. So I'm going to say that type matchups and top Pokemon matchups, or just like random Pokemon matchups in general. So let's get an example of this. Here is I imported some samples here. And I'm going to take you guys through how you should maybe Cteam them. So, I don't have every gen, but I have some that, you know, are commonly played. And I put them in order of, like, kind of how easy they are to tech in general. So, let's do it. So, here is a Sword and Shield sample team. And let's look at types. So, the first thing that comes out to me is that not only does this team kind of struggle with steel types, that's something that kind of I notice immediately, but because grounds are usually not amazing for steals in 1v1 because steals can be at full health and they can just, you know, fuck you up. But yeah, so this team is weak as fuck to fire types, and I say this because these two mons should pretty much just auto lose, right? And AV Lando T, you might think is a fairly sturdy, you know, fire type counter, but let's take a look at some fire types. So this team notably loses to Volcanion. I have the import of the team here. I got the calc open. Volcanion showing usage. Okay, this is really slow. And then I'm gonna import this really quick. And there's Therian. Timecodes, then he has a lot of sets. So, if we have the import, you know, you can run Timid just to creep. You can, because this thing's at 244 speed, so maybe you're trying to outspeed like this type of thing. So maybe you make a small adjustment and say that you want to run Timid, or you can run just bulky because, you know, this doesn't kill, right? But the issue may be that they knock you off and then earthquake you, so that is a concern. It depends how you think your opponent's gonna play. I think knockoff is probably the best play because I think Volcanion's are really fucking bulky in SS. So yeah, you want probably some speed here to outspeed the Lando T. So basically what I did here is I found a fire type that, because fire types are pretty much no fucking brainers for these mons, that beats the fire type counter, because, you know, the fire type counter, spoiler alert, does not beat every fire type set in the fucking game. You know, we only have 3 mons. This is what Here Comes Team Charm chose for this set, and this is what they got as a result. Pretty good versus most fire types, but not perfect versus you know, a Volcanion. So yeah, I would recommend specs, because think about, you know, them knocking you off, and then like, hey, look, once we're knocked off here, I'm just gonna go to band, then you don't kill, and you're gonna have to rely on getting a burn. So I would say Timid specs is the best call here. But if you don't have the example, or you don't have the import of the team, for example, and you're thinking maybe it's a band lander, or you just want to cover all sets, you could go either Shucka or Balloon Volcanion, and then here's the moves. You want Steam Eruption, Overheat, and maybe like a Wisp. You can run maybe like Fast Wisp. No, this is probably better. You got Wisp, Maybe, and then you got, you know, Sludge Bomb. I recommend Bomb on this set because it helps versus Sylveon not getting into cut-up range. We can calc this, so we got Sylveon here, San Francisco. Sylveon, San Francisco versus maybe a Volt. I don't know why I replaced the Volcano, I'm kind of bad. So, -2, and then this is extremely easy to bulk for. So you should have no problem just dumping HP, and then getting a 3-0 here with either Balloon or Shucka if you want to be completely positive that you beat this team. Another example of beating this team would be that this team struggles with steel types. So let's look at some steel types, and you can find Corviknight here. And Corv maybe with something like Moringa Berry for Sylveon, Taunt Roost, Iron Defense, and then maybe either Body Press or Iron Head. It depends how fucking tough of a battle you want versus Pharaoh, but you do obviously PP stall this set with Taunt for pressure, so you don't really need Body Press. This is an example of another set where you're taking advantage of this team's weakness to a 2-type, and actually no, this thing has Smackdown. I completely forgot about that, but I'm pretty sure. Here, let's import this. Let's import this. That was meant for Celesteela, right? Timbuktu. We got Corviknight. And we go. Here, I'll just take away the flying type for a sec. And we go maybe something like Impish. And if they're smacking you down turn 1, then you get a free Iron Defense. And then after that, they will do approximately penis damage to you. And they're only 1 bonus crit. So there you go. Smackdown is meant for Celesteela. I'm sure a Celesteela can also counter team this, but it is going to be very hard in SS, no hidden power. You could maybe run a very fat Celesteela that doesn't actually lose to Smackdown into, you know, fucking Earthquake. So you could run like, maybe, I would say like, my first gut feeling is maybe either Specs or, actually hold up, let's see how good this is. Flash Cannon with this is it to a KO. No, it does penis. So you're probably gonna want to run weakness policy so that you can live Smackdown into Earthquake and just kill it with 2 moves. And that's another idea I got just now. Weakness policy Celesteela. And another thing you could do would be a Volcarona with Cutie, Roost, like Keyberry, Wisp, Fiery Dance or something, and just don't get. I'm not gonna EV it right now, but don't get to a KO'd by Rock Tomb Lando. This is another more specific C team because you have the imports of the sets. But yeah, maybe you can make it so it's like Fire Blast, and then you don't actually lose to maybe a Banned Rock Slide if you outspeed it. I don't know, I'm not going to get too specific, but yeah, I hope I gave you a lot of ideas. Basically, you can look at how a type stacks up against maybe 2 overlapping, or 2 mons with a singular overlapping weakness, and you can specify a set to really fuck up a mon that is kind of meant to be a blanket fire type check or a blanket steel type check. Kind of both in this situation, really. And yeah, so that's my first example. I don't know why I deleted though, it's kind of stupid of me. And then my next example would be try to look at just general top tier matchup mons. So I have this black-white team, and something I instantly notice is that it is weak to psychic types. And when I was first thinking about this, I was thinking about maybe I could run an Alakazam, ha ha ha. But then I'm thinking, wait, this team kind of just loses to Latios, right? So let's look at this Hariyama set. I'm gonna go into black and white for like buff psychic or whatever. Hariyama, custom set versus Latios, choice specs. Where's psychic? Psychic is an Oko and Yama with specs. So if I wanted to C-team this team, I didn't actually know this was like a common Heatran set. So Heatran with this set, you don't get an Oko. So what you're gonna want to do is just add a smidge of bulk for to double flash cannon. Just be aware of like sets that they can be to, you know, cover up weaknesses. So if I wanted to C-team this team, I would run Draco Meteor, Psychic, Surf, and Trick. Trick and Draco should beat this thing, or Trick and Psychic and a Draco. Psychic should beat this thing, Surf should beat this thing. And then you add your little bit of bulk that I specified earlier, 56 HP. And then you got yourself a 3-0 of a sample team with the fucking Latios. Wow, that was really cool. You could also run a... Here, I'm gonna look at this calc really quick. Psychic or Size Shock. Latios versus Hariyama. So, oh wait, I don't know why. Okay, that was the wrong move. Psychic. Oh, I didn't bar Psychic. So these are both roughly as strong. So what if we could do Life Orb? Not great. So you're probably gonna want Psychic Gem. But what I was thinking was you could run a set like this: Psychic Gem, Psychic, Calm Mind, Roost, Draco, or something like that. Or this set actually kind of is not that great versus actually I think this should be fine versus Shaman. Yeah, this should be fine versus Shaman. If you wanted to really be crazy about this, you could go like, what I would probably do is run Latios, just because no Draco Latios seems kind of bad. So you could run like, I don't know, like a really fat Lati with like this, and then a lot of bulk so you don't die to Yama moves. We can take a look at that right now. With Guts, badly poisoned, Ice Punch does approximately penis damage. So if you go like max HP, then you can take these and maybe a potential Bullet Punch. If you go like kind of crazy with it, maybe like, I don't know, fucking Ganlonberry. You could run like, I don't know, Sub, Roost, CM, Psychic. This is like just some random sampling I just did right the fuck now, and yeah, this is a 3-0. And another thing I noticed about this team is that the water check is simply Shaman. So what you could do is find a water type that doesn't really struggle with Shaman. For this example, I could unironically do Tentacruel. But that is not good versus EQ, Hariyama. So maybe I can do something that is, I don't know. Maybe I could do, no, that's, yeah, okay, I'm dumb. Here, we got Gyarados right here. T-Punch Yama, just simply not exist in Black-White. I don't play that tier, but I know that's not a fucking thing. So, if you just do something like Power Herb, DD, Taunt, Waterfall, Bounce, then you get a perfect 3-0 here. This should not be a problem if you bulk right. And then, yeah, here, maybe we could do some stippling right here. But with Gyarados having Intimidate, surely should not be too hard. Actually, you might just Oko immediately off the rip. Let's see. So you got, let's do some Intimidate. Nope. And Intimidate. Bounce. That does actually 0 damage, but also this does 0 damage back to you with Intimidate checked. So there you go. There's a few 3-0s. You could pay attention to just a general top tier matchup, like, hey, this team simply does not beat Latios. Or you can pay attention to, hey, this team has a Shaman as its wild type counter. I can just abuse this right now. So next, I'm going to talk about tweaking sets with, you know, counter teams. So this team, its Charizard counter and Oras is Heatran. But luckily for Charizard, it is broken as fuck and can kind of tech whatever it wants low key. So you should be thinking to yourself, okay, how do I get Charizard to beat Heatran? Because these are kind of given matchups. There is a Zard counter, or like a Latios very recently that has tried to beat Zard, but it is not perfectly reliable. You would need like sub DD brick break outrage to beat this team and hope they don't go Mawile. But yeah, what you could do, here's another tip for Cteaming. So I'm gonna get this one. I'm gonna actually save the tip for later. I'm gonna go for this right here. So you say, hey, this Charizard counter is Heatran, so let's make a fucking Charizard that beats that shit. There's actually a few ways to do it. I'm gonna go over multiple. So my most simple one is, let's import this shit. It is max special attack, baby, which I did not expect. So Heatran, Sand, and my boy Charizard Mega X. Right here. So let's say, for example, we are max HP and max special attack. Very interesting. So let's just look at what we got out of T-Team here. Okay, we got Rock Tomb and EP. So HP is going to be a must because you're taking physical and special hits. And then you get to this, and you're thinking, wait, did I just fucking C-Team this shit immediately? And let's do the math. 81 plus 18. This is like almost a perfect not 100 thing. So there you go. Max HP makes it so that Rock Tomb into EP does not kill. So now, if you want, you can be faster than Heatran at max speed. So we go 279, not too hard. Then you got max HP, and you could go 88 plus. There you go. Then we get DD, Flare Blitz, Outrage, Brick Break, and this shit simply does not kill you. What can I say? There you go, Brick Break with, oh, this shit doesn't have Tough Claws, I think. Yep, Tough Claws. We got 80 attack, and there you go, 2 KO. You have just C-Teamed this team with the best mon in the tier. The best mon in the tier can sometimes be used as a weapon against the metagame, because if you're fucking pushing this shit forward, then I don't know, man. Like, you might just invent a really new popular set. Shouts to Rosa for Brick Break Zard. Very cool, very cool. You could also make maybe something like a Volcarona if you want to be a little different, and make it not always a Tran. There's like many ways to do that. I think the Jokra's old thing was like, I don't know why I said the Jokra, her name is Alice, but QD, Bug Buzz, Overheat, HP Ground, and then make it beat Tran with your EVs or whatever. You Bug Buzz and HP Ground, or maybe you want to do something else. That's another way to C-Team this. So yeah, basically you can kind of make your own sets with good mons to just tackle it. Hey, this counter is actually pretty easy to beat, and then this set doesn't really struggle with Latios, because Dragon Pulse simply does not kill you at Mega. So yeah, similar to that, I'm gonna go over this SM team. Now, this is not the most popular way to build SM, but something I do notice with this team is that the Heatran counter is Pheromosa. So let's do something crazy. We got two options here. We got Choppel, and then you would want to go Overheat, Rock Tomb, E-Power, Flush Cannon, and then don't fucking die to the Z move. So let's count this shit right now. SM, Pheromosa, custom right here. Z Focus Blast, Heatran with Choppleberry and max HP. Simply doesn't kill. And then you can go a little extra if you want to be certain versus Modest Fightium Z Pheromosa, baby. So let's get the Zard speed out of the way. Then we got max HP. We could go you know, that 32 SPDF shit. Actually, 248 is better, so yeah, let me just go up here. Yeah, there we go, 36. Cool. Then you got this spread right here. We can calc this versus Lele. Actually, we are gonna want to be faster than Lele for sure, so we can go like this. And then Tran. Lele. Could have imported this before the video, but I'm not gonna. 5 Yomps. Tapu Lele. Custom set. So, Flash Cannon is doing actual penis damage, I will not cap. But this thing also will do penis damage back. So, this is a 2-hit KO, so they're basically only going to get the +1. The +1 Z move, so it does not kill you. So you kind of just Flash Cannon, Flash Cannon, Flash Cannon. And faster Lele's, like let's talk this shit right now. 1 speed of bulky will take a lot from Flash Cannon. They're not as SPDF as this, so maybe something like this ain't gonna kill you. So yeah, another way to do this is with Custap and Dur. So you can do is this. Ancient Power on Helmet, or on Balloon, doesn't really suffice versus Zard, but if you got the extra Custap and Dur to just make sure that you actually get enough hits on Zard, then you should be good for that. And then you can kind of just, actually you can go a little more liberal with the EVs here. You can go something like this. Actually, don't give them the download boost. Something like this. You know, some random shit I just made. Yeah, this also works because I see that Heatran is good, and I could just slap on a different item because this is not fucking EQ Charizard. Something else you could do versus this team is run like a Scarf Greninja. Aerial Ace, not ironically, or actually probably HE Fling's better. Gunk Shot, Rock Slide, and then whatever the fuck, Hydro Cannon. And then maybe something like this. I'm going to, I'll calc versus this Zard, why not? Here, I'll just calc versus standard SPDF. Charizard, Mega X. Special defensive, yeah. Versus Greninja. So, we got Protean Rock Slide, the homie Protean Rock Slide. Rock Slide. And then, you're gonna want to have, like, hella bulk, so you don't die to Outrage. I mean, who Outrage is lol, but it's a possibility, man. And then, yeah, here's the set I just fucking made. You got 160. And I don't really fucking care what you do with this shit. But yeah, Greninja is good versus these two mons. You can tech it, but then you struggle with Formosa. So bam, you can customize its coverage, EVs, and moves all together. I mean, FYI, some of these sets might actually lose. I'm just making them up right the fuck now. But this should be fairly reliable versus this team. I don't really see a way it fucking loses besides them like Will-O-Wisping, but like not even. That doesn't really make sense. So yeah. If you Will-O-Wisp a Greninja, you should probably kill yourself. So yeah, that's how I observe this team. And the final team I have selected is something that low-key gave me a bit of annoyance to try to cover all the sets of the mons. So something I think of right here, I'm going to use the earlier rule. This team has 2 psychic types. Guard is a good like dark counter. It just beats like every good dark type besides Gunk Greninja and Oras. So I think of 2 sets that can beat this team like pretty much. If they change this to rest, then I can think of a few things. So let's get started. I noticed that the Ghost Resist is non-existent, and you have a Heatran as like the pseudo Ghost counter. So you know, my boy Dead Server comes to mind when I think of Ghost types, right? Usually Mega, but what we're gonna do here is give it specs. And something I've been practicing on the ORS ladder. Yeah, this video will be dated. You'll be like, wow, ORS had a ladder and had that LT. That was so cool. But basically something I've been fiddling around with that I got this mod from ggopw. I'm gonna be straight up. Is Spec Skingar. And a cool thing about Spec Skingar is once you realize, hey, this is, you know, the 3-0 fish, you can also think about its other attributes, right? They're going to expect you to be Mega Gengar, so they're going to throw their weak move at you so it doesn't get disabled, and then their strong move. You know, the weak move to break the sub and the strong move to finish Gengar off. Because usually they run, in ORS they run something like this. There you go. That's what they run in ORS. So they're going to throw weak moves at you. So you can take advantage of that by having a kind of unique out-of-the-box set. So we got a Shadow Ball Sludge Wave for these two fuckers, respectively. And then we're gonna go Focus Blast here. It's not too great for reliability factor, but it does get the job done most of the time versus Heatran. And there's also the factor of they might not want to overheat you, because overheating a Mega Gengar is simply a bad idea. They're probably gonna want to Flash Cannon you or something like that. So even if you miss your Focus Blast, you should be thinking of, hey, is this the end of the world if I do miss my Focus Blast? And something you could also do to maybe, if they're switching sets, you could run HP Ground as your last, because you want to be good versus all of the fucking Heatrans that they use. If they want to maybe, if you don't know it's Air Balloon, you're like, hey, I don't want to Focus Blast the Spectran if I don't want to, so maybe you got the HP Ground there. Bam, Gardevoir is not living, bruh, I don't think. Gengar, Choice Specs, yeah, Sludge Wave sends that shit packing, so there you go. So yeah, and then another obvious one that I kind of just realized is just Hydro Cannon, Dark Pulse for the other two. And then you got two options for the last move. You got Gunk Shot for just throwing a strong move at them. They're not going to Psychic you, so there you go. And then you got HP Steel. You know, Calc if HP Steel is actually the best option. But I am actually opening the Calc right now, so I can actually see, hey, I know I'm calcing SM, but actually it does matter because it's Pixelate. Wow, I'm a genius. Here, I'm just going to put this out right now. Oh, wait, wrong one. Hide me more. Gardevoir versus Greninja. Protean. Steel, and then just go none. And this is with Pixelate, not gonna kill you, so that lets you throw up 2 Hidden Power Steals with Choice Specs. There you go, this wins the game. If you're scared of CM or something, you could go Modest for better rolls, or you could go Hasty and go with Gunk Shot. Does this kill? Yes, it does. If you want to be having stronger gunks versus everything else, you can go Life Orb Gunk Shot. ggopw love that, and I always think people should be learning from him. So then you got the Grass Knot in the last coverage for just whatever the fuck, or maybe HP Electric, you know, whatever. See what's good versus the meta and your opponent, all that shit. And that is that. Basically, notice like what is a 2-1 that can be teched or modified or whatever the fuck. You know, notice overlapping weaknesses. Think about the type chart. Think about resist berries. Think about weird coverage. Think about just general set building. Think about maybe, hey, I can actually EV this mon to beat this mon. All that shit. So yeah. Okay. So when it comes to general tournament prep, I feel like, you know, the process of, you know, making a team for your opponent is like very simple. You know, you look at your replays, you find something you like, and you build with it, and then maybe your other partners have also good matchups. There you go. It's that fucking simple. You don't. It's really not rocket science. Still, hey, I like this model. I'm gonna build around it and hope it through as my opponent. There you go. That's the very like general process of making a team for an opponent. But I feel like half the story is, you know, what the broad scope of what you're using in X tournament or Y tournament is, or maybe overall, you know. So I think having like a specific, like diverse set of teams is really important, and you need to use them smartly. And you know, so do you want to talk about reusing?
I think, all right. Dude, okay. Reusing is something that a lot of people like discourage against to new players or people on their team, because the idea is that when you reuse, you're like risking Cteaming. That's the general idea.
Not only that,
that's a little.
Your opponent might also know your sets, and if you played a tournament series where you know your opponent's sets, it's way easier. You know, for example, you're fighting a sample team. You're like, oh, I know these sets, you know, or you're fighting a team that your friend made. You know the sets, so when you know the sets, it is way easier to think, okay, what is my opponent like? What is my tournament playing 1v1 opponent feasibly going to click here into this matchup? It's way easier to think what your opponent is thinking if you have like the team right in front of your face.
It's also way harder to pull off baits or like stuff that looks like a 3-0 or you know, it's just generally your opponent knowing what your team is bad.
Yes,
and that's like, I don't know, but the thing with reusing is no one's gonna build fucking 35 teams in 7 weeks, or if you're in best of 7, it's even worse.
Yeah,
because you're building 49 teams going into playoffs. Like most people simply do not have the capacity to do that with like new team each time, and it's even sometimes not reusing like entire teams. You can just reuse the same 2 mons.
Yeah.
A lot of the like, I remember back in PL, we were getting fucking like burnt out with stupid ass lax meta, so we like ended up using a lot of Drago Rilla, because at the time it covered like pretty decent amount of the meta. It actually may not have been like those exact 2 mons, but it was something like that, and that just covered a lot of the meta. And that saves a lot of time, saves a lot of energy prepping. And the reason that you would want to like save time prepping is fucking burnout.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because by the time you get to playoffs, it's really frustrating to have to keep building new shit. Like there's only so much new you can use, which is, and that's another important thing. You have to use new shit at some point. Like if you're bringing the same 10 guys each series, you're just gonna get C-teamed.
Yeah.
Like you can look at players like Bomb 21XD.
No smoke.
Who get hit. No, but yeah, they use the same 10 mons, and then people try to C-team them, and that doesn't usually work in Bomb's case.
Some succeed.
Like, yeah, some succeed. Like now, tournament banned user Paddock succeeded.
Dude, that's gonna age super like badly if people come back to this video in a while. But allow me to interject. So when Zai was talking about, you know, this Regidrago Rillaboom core, for example, so what I think of when I build some teams with like, you know, 2 really good mons, like maybe like, for example, you know, in honest, Zard Gyarados, you know, you could have like 10 different thirds for that team, and you can cater a specific third to a specific opponent, because a lot, if you know, if you're spamming these broken mons, you're gonna have pretty easy to cover thirds, especially if, you know, you can change your Zard's you know, form, and you can change your Gyarados' moves to, you know, dynamically cover different types of things. So you know, you can change your hit list a little bit, and just generally kind of get away with the same core, as long as you're not spamming it like week by week. And something that you can use to your advantage is maybe in like weeks 1 or 2 you prefer this style of team, and this doesn't work as much for SS or maybe metas that are changing really fast, but maybe like, so, you know, you use your team week 1 or 2, this style of team, maybe for example like Gardevoir Heatran in OS, and then you stop using it for the remainder, and then you can bring it back feasibly in you know, a later week when your opponent's like, oh, they only brought this shit like, you know, week 1, week 2. You can bring it, you know, week 7 playoffs if you really like it. Then and your opponent is not like super try hard, you know, prepping for a week 1 teams, then you can go with that for sure. And it's just, I think it's important to just not get like predictable, but that doesn't mean you have to build 35 teams a tournament, you know. It means you just shouldn't be getting away with teams that lose to the same stuff over and over. That's pretty much it.
I think I agree with a lot of that, but I think that's like very distinct to Team Tours. Because the thing with Team Tours is every replay is like forced public,
and they're long,
and people will be checking.
Yeah.
The thing with individuals, you can kind of get away with reusing a lot more.
Yeah.
It's just like reusing entire teams. You don't even have to like reuse cores or change shit. Like because for large portions of the tour, shit is hidden. That's usually not true as you get into later in the tournament, like qualifying stage of majors or LT bracket or top 16 of seasonal.
Yeah.
Like, you should probably start diversifying shit by then.
Especially because sometimes, you know, the meta fucking changes in those individuals or these team tours. And if you're just being lazy and putting yourself, you know, behind the meta, if you're like prepping the week 1 SS meta, you know, during week 5, week 6, when maybe there's a ban or just, you know, general shakeups, that's something you want to avoid for sure.
Yeah, I think people generally are like good at that, because I recall last PL where Lax was banned like week 4 or 5, and immediately the next week and for the rest of the tour there was no clef usage.
Yeah.
Not a single clef. Like, there's some mods that are just not good in meta shifts. Like, they have a specific purpose, and then
pay
the
attention to the current meta. Watch your games, or watch your, you know, your opponent's games, other games of the same format. You know, you don't need to watch fucking DPP games if you're an SS player. But you know, keep up with the meta as fuck. That is important, because, you know, maybe you didn't know, you know, Karen Black runs Toxic in Oras or whatever, and then your shit gets Toxic, and, you know, you're getting 3-0 by, or you counted upon, you know, your Sableye to be Kieran Black or whatever, when that's not the case. And yeah, just keep up with the meta. As you go on playing a meta for like a long time, especially PL, your mindset might change of certain mons, or if they're like an archetype, or, you know, a team you made, you're like, wow, this team from 2 weeks ago sucks, you know, that's fine. Or you could like find a new glue mon that you really like, and you just keep spamming it over and over, and you're getting away with it. You know, that's fine too. I think it's good to have your mindset of the tier change a bit. That's healthy, because it means you're not being stubborn and you're, you know, learning.
Yeah, being stale is definitely something you want to avoid, because there are people who are very good at picking up habits while Cteaming, and if you just spam the shit, or like same shit over and over again, you will get owned. Yeah. Like, I remember back in, like, I just said about like the Drago Relicore, like, we went into Porygons and they just they CT the shit out of us with Sally at 3 out all or not, like, pretty admittedly lazy building.
Yeah.
At some point, you kind of want to use new shit, like.
Yeah, or just don't overwork yourself to the point where you're like half-heartedly like throwing out these teams that keep losing the same stuff over and over and over. Like, be very aware, have like a good mental. If you need your teammates to build for you, or your friend even, just be like, yo, pass me teams. If you're not like competing super hard with them, then like go for it, you know.
Yeah,
avoid burnout, like super hard. That is that is not something you want at all.
Burnout's just a fucking killer, because you'll shit out of a team in 5 minutes without any quality check. You'll just be like, yeah, these 3 mods look like vaguely okay together, and then you'll lose to Genesis in PL finals. Like,
I've seen multiple team tours, even recently, where people will be building extremely last minute in like finals. It's, dude, what are you fucking guys doing? Like, what?
It's just burnout. Like, it's just a frustration or whatever, like, you feel at the time. It's annoyance at just getting, I don't know. It's hard to push shit beyond a certain point. Like, I don't know, especially when tours drag on. You can definitely just feel like you're reusing the same shit again and again. But I don't know, I think it's important to find something you're comfortable with.
Yes,
in terms
absolutely.
of mons.
But also, you should be breaking your comfort sometimes. But, you know, go on.
Yeah, I think there's importance in comfort mons. Even when getting past, there's importance in using mons that you're familiar with how to use in game and in the builder. Like, what it can be literally whatever. Like, it can be whatever mon. I mean, there's mons in particular that are probably like good at covering a lot of shit and good at glue mons, but find what you like, enjoy. Just use those mons a lot. I don't know, probably not to like.
Well, no, that's part of finding your style. Finding your style is honestly the most important part of building, if you ask me. But
speaking personally, I fucking love some breakers. Like, I spam the shit out of like, I spam the shit out of like Zarud and Haxorus and Sock and shit like that, because I'm familiar with how to build with those mons.
Mhm.
They all have pretty similar targets, with like pretty similar weaknesses.
Yeah.
So it's easy to build a bunch of new teams that don't look like each other while still using mons that are very similar to each other. If that makes any sense.
When I'm like building ORS and I'm building like with some random offensive mon, I immediately think, okay, how am I going to beat Sableye, Slowbro, Venusaur? That is just something that comes into my mind. That's why I started liking Zarwai a lot, because it covers it doesn't really cover Sableye as well, but it covers Steels, Slowbro, Venu, just annoying fat mons for like when I explore, like, hey, let me see what happens when I use a fucking lantern, or whatever. Conversely, this is what Zara said. I'm gonna completely like preach the opposite way, but you should be getting out of your comfort zone at some times to see like what works. What is I want to be the most knowledgeable, like well-rounded player I can be. What is something I don't use that I should be using? Or I'm gonna see. Okay, I'm gonna see what happens when I use this mon, or when I build with this mon. Maybe you don't want to build, or you don't want to bring it to your series or set. But you're like, okay, I want to build with this mon, and I really want to see, what are its strengths and weaknesses. So, if you learn about that like repeatedly, like over a long period of time, you will become like way better, because you will like quickly learn like, okay, this mon is good and this mon is bad. I don't want to use Mega Bennett. No, I will not use Reuniclus. Stuff like that.
Fucking yeah. I don't know. It's definitely important to mess with new shit, because using the same mons again isn't like, it's not only gonna get tiring, it's also exploitable to an extent. But I don't know. I would definitely, if you're trying to learn a new mon, I would definitely learn it alongside some other mons that are similar. There's a few cases, like speaking SS specifically, like Aromatisse is kind of its own beast. But a lot of mons fall in line with similar mons. Like, okay, say you want to learn how to build Venu shit. When you're learning Venu shit, you can probably learn how to build with Bulu as well. It has pretty similar matchups. It has like differences in beating Drago, but it's kind of the same idea of you beat a lot of slower physical attackers. And you can cheese some faster mons, but generally you're going to be winning against slower mons.
Yeah. And yeah, I agree with that a lot. Do you have anything else to say on that thought?
I'm trying to think. I think establishing mons together is like pretty important, and that's an underutilized tactic to learn how to use new mons. Because I mean, you can go just matchup by matchup for every mon, but that's like, I don't know, that's super time consuming. If you have the world of time on your hands, you can do that, but I think it's more productive to just experience using more mons, and a easy way to transition into new mons is basing them off old mons that you're already experienced with using.
Yeah. Like, if you're, for example, if you're getting out of your comfort zone, you know who's not going to expect that? Your opponent. They're not going to read you, building with Mega Lopunny for the first time. They have no idea that, you're coming up with this thing. They're like, okay, I don't usually build with something like this. They're going to have no idea. And maybe, they're getting 3-0'd by, a Tapu Bulu, and they're like, dude, he never has used Tapu Bulu before. I don't care that he gets, or that this team loses to Bulu, because, what are the chances he's going to use it for the first time against me? And then, bam, you bring a Bulu and he loses,
Yeah.
It's a weapon, honestly. Just coming out of the blue with random shit. And not saying you should, force yourself to use, like, Riolu or whatever, but you should, if you're like at an intermediate level, you should be absolutely thinking outside of your current like perception of a tier, like for sure. And something that is a little, I guess, like kind of similar is, change up your glue mons. Don't use the same, Zard counters over and over. Then you're gonna fight like some Brick Break Tran or some Brick Break Zard, or that counter bulldoze shit that ORC made. Don't have like predictable responses to top tier mons.
Something I would also like to add on to that is that if you're using something that's super like just focused on countering one mon, then they're just not gonna bring that mon a lot of the time. I mean, they may, but
It
kind
depends. It depends.
It varies on who you're playing.
Yeah.
Like some people will just bring their favorite mon until the day they fucking die, but a lot of people will scout their opponent's usage and will see like, oh, this mon just fucking sucks to them. I'm not gonna bring it. Like, you're just kind of worsening your matchups by spamming the same checks to the same mons.
Yeah.
And I don't know, people like to piss their pants about how X mon has like 3 counters, but that is very rarely true. You can diversify counter usage a lot.
Yeah, you can make
and, like,
sets that, like, for example, if you have like a versatile mon, like maybe like, I don't know, a Mew, a Celestial, or a Victini, you can like bend those mons to counteract a top tier mon, and from there, you know, they're not gonna expect that. I mean, unless you're like going like extremely outside the box to where the set is unusable. I mean, if you just slap maybe like a resist berry or like a weakness policy, you know, maybe you can, you know, have a more unpredictable response to a certain thing.
Yeah, talking SS, there are a lot of people who are like, I don't know if I want to generalize, but okay, for example, like people will stick to the same exact like Zygarde checks because they won't bring Avlug because it gets breaking swiped into Dracoed or some shit like that. Like, okay, it's sometimes it's acceptable to lose to Draco Meteor Zygarde.
or wait, I mean, I don't like set guessing as a crutch, but if you theoretically, you know, this is a really like retarded example because, you know, that set is stupid, but if, you know, your Avlog is in fact in danger of getting teched by some insane Zygarde user, you know, maybe you know, your Avlog's partner scares off this stupid ass set, you know. It doesn't have to be a Zygarde counter, but something that, you know, beats this one set that beats your thing.
Yeah. Yeah, you could definitely force your opponent to play harder with stupid fucking C-team sets.
Yeah.
On top tiers. But that's also another reason you switch shit. So that, I guess that could work in the opposite way of like, you're someone who spams Avalug to check Zyg and they pick up on that. Then switch up Avalug. Like, they will bring fucking Corn Forcer or whatever nonsense it is.
Yeah, I mean, for a mon like Zygarde, like, are you really gonna be like getting these perfect matchups where you beat the counter ridiculously easily? Not feasibly. You might get it once, you know, something like that. And overall, I feel like we've touched on, you know, diversifying your usage enough. But generally, I think team building definitely comes down to just the way you do things, you know, your process. For example, I kind of like playing friendlies with teams and test games. Some people don't because, you know, they know how their teams work, but I'm very like focused on, okay, this mon, you know, Mega Lopunny Enormous, for example, is just so easy to win with, you know. So if, you know, my friend is playing a big, like, high stakes game and they're down, you know, maybe they just use a Mega Lopunny because, you know, it's easy to win with. I gave Zio the landed team on Kieran Black team because I was just destroying everyone in friendlies with it. And I'm like, am I just going to keep this like good team in the back for who knows when? Or am I going to give it to my friend for like a huge match? And I decided I'm just going to give it to him because, you know, these teams that are easy to win with are actually pretty good. Believe it or not.
I think friendlies are person to person. I think that's a genuinely fair, like, if you're happy with how much a team wins and you're realizing that, like, into a lot of meta teams, you're either picking up 3-0s or picking up pretty good or free matchups, like, that's definitely valuable. I agree with that. I think it's also person to person. Some people's mentality get destroyed by getting fucking
absolutely.
Like,
I've heard people
tossed.
just like shit themselves in Tor because, oh no, I lost with this team in friendlies. Like, who cares, bro? But
I think it's also I think playing friendlies and like mock best of fives is absolutely paramount in learning new tiers. Yes, going PL week 7, I switched off playing SS because Gym Socks. So I like played so many DPP friendlies with whoever would entertain. Like, so and then That's how I learned tier. And then going into ORSPO tiebreaker is my first time playing an official. So I played like a fuck ton of friendlies against whoever would play friendlies with me. It's definitely valuable for learning new tiers.
Yeah, and I think this I recommend like people who are like just starting to like really like, you know, start building heat, you know, they start throwing weakness policy on shit, you know, resist berries. The second you start doing that and you've never done it before, I'd say test those teams to see, is this good or is this bad, you know? Because if you're not necessarily comfortable or you haven't like developed a super rock solid style yet, then I don't think you should be heading into tournament series not knowing if your set is good or not, you know, or if it like feasibly works. Definitely test your sets to see if they work, obviously, if you're not sure, or just calc a fuck ton, you know, some people just do that. But
yeah, there's definitely people who like oversight, make some set that beats a pretty small threat list, and they don't realize that it's like kind of bad because they won't test it. And you'll test a bad set and you'll see like this shit is 0-3 every game, or like it's just never good. It never hits. Like there's no team that is weak to this specific bullshit. Then you just like, I think a good example of that would be like Gastrodon and SS. Like I don't know if people use that shit, but on paper it seems like it can 3-0 some teams. But if you in practice, it's
Gastrodon is like 5 moves minimum, in my opinion.
Yeah, maybe that's a bad example, but like
no, I mean you don't like Gastrodon, it doesn't work for you. That's how you view the tier, you know. I
mean,
like that's just an opinion you have, you know. That's totally fine. And I feel like the second you learn that, hey, this mon is not for me, that's totally cool. You know, don't use it that much. Maybe use it once to, you know, keep your opponent on your toes, and if it's a good glue, and it makes your opponent scared, because Gastrodon's like kind of scary at preview, you know, for example.
Intimidating.
Yeah, and I think that, you know, your process is important, and if you're learning, like this is your first team tour, and maybe you're like 1-1 or something, then test it out, you know, test out your teams to see if they're really legit.
Yeah, there's definitely some shit that you will not be able to just like tell through matchups. Like, this is almost kind of completely subjective, but there are some mods like Mega Dino and ORS where people just don't click into that shit because it's like an Dino.
Yeah.
But
if you have used the Mega Dino and ORS, you know it's fucking good. Like, yeah.
It is like scarily good for how like mid it should be on paper.
Yeah, absolutely. That's just like once you start learning on paper versus in practice, like experienced players, there's not that much of a like gap or divide, but like you can think Amon is the shit and then it loses you 2 tournament games because you didn't beat the thing you expected to, or wow, this Mon is just an 0-3 every fucking game. Why am I even fucking bringing it?
Oh yeah, no, dude, you can. There's also, this is like kind of a rarer thing, I guess. But there are some mods that just like 50-50 a lot of what they're supposed to be, or like rely on yawn turns or some like I don't know some RNG element. Like I don't know, Mulcher's D or Yawn Sylv and SS. Like on paper, those mons are fucking amazing, but in practice, you just don't get the turns. It's or like the stuff you need to go your way.
And if you're Nolanot who gets 3 turn sleep on every single yawn, then go ahead and spam Sylveon. It works for you. But if you're like very frustrated at the fact that your opponent just 33% won a matchup that you should be winning, then you know maybe yawn is not your set on Sylveon. Maybe you know you're a Tapu Fini user, or you're a Spec Sylveon user, or Custap Sylveon user. You know, whatever.
Yeah. Also, don't overestimate yourself in winning 50-50s. I mean, there's some mons that like. I feel like most 50-50 matchups, you should just consider losing matchups. You should not build in mind with the fact that I will just 50-50 this mon.
Yeah,
should be.
It's like if I'm gonna talk about RNG elsewhere in this series, but
yeah, this is probably reserved for a different section, but
yeah, but it's important for like once you start learning that hey, Charizard Wise Air Slash can flinch your slow mon. It's like oh shit, like maybe I need to approach building differently, you know. Figure like keep RNG in mind and don't just think of it of oh I got hacks in a friendly, fuck my friend, you know, like that's such a small loss when you can be learning a lot more.
Yeah, you can say that a lot about like old stall mons in old generations. Like on paper, their matchups are fucking insane. But if you play friendlies, you'll see very quickly, wow, stall sucks. It just gets crit and loses. It's not good.
And
that's like hyperbolic, but
yeah, no. I mean, dude, Registeel has so many chances to get crit. It's that simple. But okay, the last thing I want to touch on is this is my personal certified opinion, but once you reach the later stages of a tournament, don't use bad teams, dude. Come on, man. Only use gas. Only use good teams. There's no reason to put yourself in situations where your opponent has the upper hand because their team fucking sucks. There's no reason to like have a situation where you could potentially disappoint your team when you have 5 better teams lying around, or maybe not 5, but you have 1-2 better teams that you could have been using, but instead you like tried to fish your opponent and then it failed because using some ass or something.
Yeah,
like
just
that.
bring solid, QC your shit. It seems obvious, but I think a lot of people don't plan for burnout. I definitely didn't. You don't realize by the time that you get to finals that you just don't want to play this fucking stupid game anymore. So, I don't know. I think it's definitely important to take breathers and, I don't know, not take shit too seriously. And then when you do get to finals, properly QC shit. Do what you've been doing the whole tournament. Don't rest on your laurels because you won the most recent tiebreak or whatever.
Mm-hmm. And if maybe your team won the week and your record doesn't mean that much to you, maybe you can use some ass in the regular weeks. Maybe you can use a fucking floor just.
Yeah, just fuck around.
It's Pokemon's for fun, If you're not like hyper worried about your sheet ranking or like your team fucking 7-2ing no, that's not even a thing. Your team 6-2ing instead of 5-3ing. If that means everything to you, if that one number means everything to you, then yeah, try your ass off every single week. But like the best teams should probably be saved for the end, if you ask me, because like if you're someone like me or Zaya who has gotten to a fuck ton of playoffs, you've been in situations. Yeah, he's been in finals a ton. I've been in playoffs a ton. Been in finals a few times.
3
you
finals,
should be using.
1 win.
Yeah, hey, that's a win. I'm not 0-3, But if you're in this situation where your team doesn't need to win that hard, then just take it like have fun. But in playoffs, like don't be pulling out the playoffs with like some complete ass and then your team like flames you for 20 minutes. I'm not saying be afraid of your team, but I'm saying like
this entire tangent is directed at Radu, by the way.
Dude, he hasn't even been in my mind, but like this is a perfect example. don't just like force out like 5 teams and be like, okay, I'm going to win finals for my team, hurrah.
Okay, for clarification for the viewers, Radu brought some absolutely dog shit DPP teams to the tiebreak when offered other teams. I don't know.
And then got defeated.
I don't want to blame him too much because I was also burnt out and I also fucking threw in some SS prep, but it's just. It's really important.
People make mistakes, but dude, winning in finals or playoffs is exponentially harder and like bigger because it's kind of easy to get into playoffs, low key. If you're like a figure like me or Zio who can build a fuck ton, like give advice to people. Not even ghosting. I'm not even trolling. Like I'm not even saying like, I ghost everyone. I'm saying like. If you're like a leader on your team who finds themselves in playoffs repeatedly, you're gonna realize that winning in finals is hard as fuck. So why not, have the best teams imaginable for that? Maybe you have that team in the back of your builder that you're like, dude, I need to whip this out for finals. Do it. Bring that anti-meta good ass team.
Yeah.
Because you can only see teams so much in finals, really.
I think we've kind of hit what we want to.
Yeah, absolutely.
I apologize. I have a direct personal apology to Radu.
No, don't apologize. You need to unapologize right now.
Alright, I apologize.
I was
Ryan, my lover.
So something that I stress in 1v1 is quantity is not as good as quality. You do need 5 teams a week, probably, if you're, going to a best of 5. But there's like a few things, my first point is that, if you're using bad teams, like if you ever just headed into a series with bad teams, you just know that it's just not the move. Like you want to be using teams that give you consistently the best chances to win, and if they're like a team that's a little bit older or a team that's you spent 1 hour on, that's fine. You don't need to build 5 teams a week. In fact, I definitely recommend against building 5 teams a week. Like you should not be doing that. You should be building like 2 or 3, and then ask your teammates for the teams, or look at your old teams you have not brought in that specific tournament, or teams that your opponent isn't expecting, but you have in your builder. So what do you gotta say, Dag?
Yeah, that's true. Like in champs, I sometimes built like 4 teams instead of 5 because I just focused on quality more than quantity. First, it takes less time and it lets you focus on like preparing against that opponent. For example, against Nalai, I only built 4, and I had to like recycle one that I found really good. Like you just check what their team is weak against, like game 1, game 2, and like you can recycle. After that, you always bring like the strongest teams first and check if they are pretty good against your opponent. So, and then you decide if you recycle this team or this team or this team, because like if you think about it, a well-polished team has less 3-0s, so you have generally a better matchup against a big part of the meta, so you don't get like matchup fished from your opponent, and that's pretty good. And it also helps you on preview, because like a strong team is easier to click with and it doesn't put you in a tough spot.
Yeah, and also you're talking about good teams have less 3-0s, but good teams also, in my opinion, like I view it from a more broad sense, good teams win more. They just win more. Like it doesn't have anything to do with 3-0s, because every team has 3-0s, and a lot of teams will have like similar amounts of 3-0s, but a good team is just fucking easy to win with, in my opinion. At least for you, at least for the person using it, it should be easy to win with. You shouldn't be like struggling to win in any given series, really, unless your opponent is just like that much better at building than you are, and then you're helpless. But still, I think it goes beyond just 3-0s. It goes on like how easy is it for you to win, especially against your opponent. So
yeah, because I think if you build a good team, it has like you have a good matchup against like the majority of the VR, instead of losing to like the bottom half or something. So let's say if you build like 4 teams and you might be weak to like water fairy types, so on a team another team isn't weak to that, because like you took more time building this team and then later you just built for like just fast just to finish building 5, so that's bad. You need to give the same amount of time to the first team and to the last team, and that's why you sometimes end up with 3, sometimes 4, and that's perfect. There's no need to worry about anything else.
Yeah, and like I think that great teams, like a great team, should be ahead of the meta in some way. That's like something I feel like can get you an advantage beyond matchups, is just having like a certain tech that might catch on after it gets revealed or whatever, or something that is just amazing versus your opponent's usage or whatever. So that's why I say if you have a great team that you like versus your opponent, you're really confident in it, you can just bring it twice, or you can like do like what you kind of alluded to like mid-series adapting. That's something that like Derek was huge on. What Derek would do, and I don't recommend this, but what Derek would do is like when you're playing against him, oh shit, his timer's running really low, he must be thinking really hard, he would just be building against you during the game. It would just be fucking it's like the stupidest process, but it like mid-series adaptation is kind of interesting, and I do recommend that players think more about that, because if you're preparing for a week in PL semis or whatever, you have like this idea of, hey, this is what I think they'll use, but in practice what they do use is like oftentimes pretty different, especially in like big matches, because you know, if you're fighting someone really good in a big match, they should be kind of making it hard for you to get 3-0s or whatever, because you know, you should have like as a player a little bit of awareness of like, oh, I've been losing to this sometimes, so let me like not lose to this, you know, in like a big match or whatever.
Yeah, that's true. You have to like know about the meta to build mid-series. To be honest, it's not that
No,
easy.
I don't recommend it at all, but I recommend like
Yeah.
adapting to what your opponent is bringing mid-series if you need to, because like
Yeah, that's true. Like if you build a team that's pretty weak to like, let's say Ante, and your opponent brought Ante game 1, game 2, just don't bring it. Or like, yeah, just don't bring it because they might use it again.
And also there's the sense of like maybe you're like super hard, or maybe not hard Cteaming, but you're like kind of Cteaming their old teams, and you like think they're gonna reuse or whatever, or you think they're gonna bring like really similar shit that gets, you know, either lured or just 3-0'd, and they bring different stuff, then there's really no reason to bring that. There's not a lot of reason anyways. Maybe you have like a hunch that, you know, if they're down, if it's 1-1, they're gonna bring their old team, and if you're like super studying habits, then yeah, maybe, but like overall, you should be focusing on, you know, quality over quantity, because quantity just doesn't really work in your favor in like in big matches especially. Like that's like the worst time to have a quality or quantity over quality mindset, is like in a big match. Like I highly recommend that. Like yeah, maybe you could build something in 5 minutes for like PL week 3, like who gives a fuck at that point, but like when the stakes are high, you should be spending a lot of time making sure that your team is good. Yeah, and you should be thinking like the teams I like to use in big matches, or have other people use, are like teams where it's like kind of a given that, you know, you beat this one, you beat this one, you beat this one, you beat this, because like, you know, your team has synergy and shit, so you don't have to like actually like be worried about every single mon A+ ranked on the VR, when, you know, maybe it's kind of a given that you beat those mons.
Yeah, that's true. I sometimes like waste 2 hours on a team because I just want it to be perfect. Like there's no perfect team, just near perfect. And yeah, another thing is that don't mass build same day, because you're thinking the same. Like if your day 1 teams are weak to a mon, I think they will all be weak to the same mon, because you're like forgetting about it.
That's why I think reusing is actually not even a bad thing at all, is because, you know, say you reuse this team that you used, like in like the World Cup before or something, and maybe you're hypothetically playing PL, you're gonna be weak to different shit at that point than you are now. So if your opponent is expecting you, for example, to be really weak to like Spec Porygon Z or something, and if you bring a team that just has like a bunch of, or it has like a steel type, and you know, it doesn't laser PZ, then yeah, then that can really like fuck up like your opponent's plans, I guess.
Yeah, as long as it doesn't like, it isn't weak against what your opponent has been bringing game 1, game 2, or like in the previous weeks, yeah, it should be fine.
Yeah, I think that you should do it. Like honestly, your team won't like it if you go into a series with 4 like teams. Like that's not gonna be something your team will like be happy about. But if you can like, if you're the type that can kind of like figure it out, because you know your builder's pretty big, and you have like, you know, knowledge of the meta and shit, then that's not like the biggest deal. I would personally head into a series with 5 teams always, and there's gonna be teams that like you like the least. Like you're gonna have a team that you're like not super duper confident about, so you can swap that out if you want.
Yeah, that's true.
Crucify told me that he used to be, or he still is, like the type to build like 6 teams, or have 6 teams ready for a tournament, and then use like 3 or 4, because like, you know, these 6 teams, like you have 6 teams available, but they're available. That's all they are. That's not what like, you know, is always. I mean, it also
it depends how much time you have. Sometimes people do have time to build 6, and yeah, sometimes if you have time to build 6 quality teams, that's perfect. But I don't think like a lot of people have that much time. So 3, 4, and 5 is pretty good. And in team tournaments, 3 or 4 is perfect because like you just can steal from previous weeks from another slot, or like somebody just build one for you. So like you mix it up.
Or there's the case that you have this meta or this team in your builder that maybe you used in like an individual like once. And when I think about like teams that you're not building, what I used to do is I would just look at like, hey, I don't really feel like building a Greninja team this week, so let me like go in my builder and find an old Greninja team that like works. And this is more of an old gens thing than a new gens thing, but yeah.
New gens are more. New gens are more about adaptation. So like you don't find a lot of good stuff from previous tournaments, but old gen, it's easy to recycle. It's easier to recycle, yeah.
I guess the last thing I'll say is that if there's like a certain players, like for example in SS, if there's like a certain players that like kinda get the meta, like are kind of ahead of it, or like super like defining what the meta is, you can just reach out to them and say like, hey, assuming they're not on the opposing team, be like, hey man, what do you think about X or Y or whatever. And this doesn't really work in like team tournaments as much, but it super duper works in individuals because there's literally no incentive for them to leak at all. But yeah, that's more of an individual's point. If you like see people that are like on the meta, you can just reach out to them like, yo, like, what are your thoughts on this, or can you give me a team, or whatever.
Yeah, that's true. They can also like you can give them 2 mounts and they can complete the team for you, and like ask if your team is good. Like having more eyes on your team is like better because you might miss something and the other don't miss it. That's why I ask multiple people when playing individuals and just give them my team and see, hey, am I weak to something, or like is it fine? Yeah, in team tournaments you have your teammate to support you.
Yeah, and your team is a valuable resource. If you need one of your teams to give you a team for that slot, like, that's like totally fine, honestly. And if you're in SS, then you have 3 SS slots, and if you're in like ORS, ORS is a meta that doesn't really change a lot, or SM. I mean, SM like kind of changes a lot, like if you're in like ORS or DPP specifically, you can just ask like, hey, does anyone have like a good DPP team?
Yeah, like DPP and ORS are pretty old metas. You just have to like adapt to the new stuff like Haban, Current Black, or like stuff like this that pop up new, but they're not that new. Like there's not a lot of stuff that are new.
And like about the Haban Current thing is like, your team shouldn't like look like, oh wow, that team looks so old. If you are gonna reuse something, it should be like, oh, I've seen that team before, I guess. That should be the type of vibe that people get. Not like, oh wow, that team is literally 2014. But yeah.
Yeah, 2014 is too old.
Yeah. Do you have anything else to say? I'm running out of things to say.
Nah, that's fine. Like you just build quality, not build quality and not quantity. Ask for help from your teammates or from like other people if you're playing solo, and that's it.
Because like no one, like, I mean, some people do if they're like insane or like super like clearly the best player at that point, but no one really does it alone. Teams are there for a reason. Your friends are there if you're playing an individual or whatever.
Yeah, that's true. And you mix up your stats so you don't get counter teams. That's another good point from asking for help.
Yeah. Dag is like the biggest help asker of all time. This dude asks like 10 people that are worse than him, hey, what do you think about my team? It's like, bro, you should know this.
Yeah.
But other people's eyes always do help because people have like tendencies that can be exploited a lot. Like, I remember Potato Chan was like really confident apparently in PL5 finals that I would give Zio a team that fucking was 3-0 by Specs PZ. And that was I gave Zio like 4 steel type teams and then one without it, and then he loaded Specs PZ into the one without it. It was like bullshit. But I mean, that's the game you play.
Yeah, sometimes you just get locked.
Yeah. So, yeah, that's all I gotta say. definitely focus on quality, and then the wins kind of, if you focus on quality, the wins kind of just start appearing, you know. If you're like really just consistently building good shit, then you'll just start winning, so you don't need to have 5 teams if you're fucking 3-0ing kids, you know. For example, or at least 5 good teams, like 5 like amazing teams. You don't need to have 5 amazing teams, in my opinion.
Yeah, using like quirky stuff and stuff that you build fast might have a bad matchup on preview, and while picking they might feel bad. So
I'm big on like how a team feels. Most people aren't, like a lot of people aren't, but I like hella focused on like how a team actually like plays out when I'm using it, or when other people are using it, because I don't want to give someone some janky ass team that just sucks, because then I'll feel bad.
Yeah. That's like an important part while building.
Yeah.
In my opinion, yeah.
No, that is something like I like stress super hard and no one else does. Like I've talked to like Crucify Zio, other people, they don't fucking test their teams, but I'm like, bro, I don't want to build ass.
Yeah, sometimes like the teams looks good, but you can't click with it.
Yeah.
Just you have overlapping 2-1s, overlapping 1-2, everything overlaps, so it feels bad clicking it.
Or just you don't like your sets. Like your sets are like, why am I running this set in this scenario? This is retarded.
Yeah, that's true. That also is true.
So yeah, so set ambiguity in 1v1 is a concept that has kind of been talked about more recently, but it has always existed. So basically, set ambiguity is when your Pokemon have enough sets that make sense on that team to where it can be hard or even impossible for other players, spectators, or just anyone else to figure out what sets they are at team preview. And it is a huge advantage to have over your opponent. Let's look at this 1v1 PL Finals replay. I gave Zio this team because it was destroying people in friendlies, and I said, hey, if you're gonna use this later in the series because it has enough set ambiguity to where if your opponent even does have a 3-0, they might not even pick it. Because if this is maybe earlier in the series, you know, they could just pick the safe out versus you and then hope they win, right? But later in the series, the stress, you know, tension, it's gonna be kind of hard to approach fighting this team without overthinking, right? But let's take a look at what these sets could be. So if you know ORAS, I mean, I'm gonna keep using ORAS as an example because it's not a gen where sets are usually ambiguous. In SS and DPP, they pretty much are most of the time because, you know, the mons that are great in those tiers have like as many sets as you can think of. Maybe not like Tapu Fini, but, you know, pretty much any like really, really good mon in SS can kind of just have as many sets as you really want. So in ORAS, that's not as much of the case. I mean, Zard exists, and Zard is a whole ambiguity machine on its own. But, you know, thinking about it without Zard present is also something that can help you, you know, become a more ambiguous builder. So, yeah, let's actually dive into this team right now. So, this is a either AV Lando or Haban Kieran Black, because this team otherwise loses to Zard. If this is not AV Lando, not Scarf, or it could be Scarf Lando. It could be Scarf or AV Lando, and it can also be Haban Kieran Black. Both of these beat Zard. I mean, also it could theoretically be Scarf Kieran Black, but that set kind of sucks. And Potato Chan knows and knew that I think that set sucks. So yeah. But let's get into the other sets. So if you know anything about ORAS, it's kind of likely that one of these mons is going to be Specs. And the meta at this point was trending like hella towards Haban Kieran Black and Specs Lando as like sets that kind of became more popular. Haban Kieran Black was present before, but not as much. In PL, people kind of started spamming it, and then Lando T was kind of not really used as much until this tournament when people started using Specs and AV and some Scarf, but mostly Specs and AV. Specs catches a lot of stall off guard. Stuff like Specs Lando is good because your opponent is going to be expecting to be hit with, you know, a physical attack and not a strong ass special attack. And Lando T also has great coverage. So basically, Petition's probably thinking, knowing a bit about ORAS at this point, that hey, this is either Specs Lando and Haban Kieran Black, or maybe AV Lando or Scarf Lando and a Specs Kieran Black. But it's kind of impossible to know which one it really is at this point, like legitimately. There's no real way to tell, and maybe it doesn't have the biggest impact on this game specifically, but it still is a huge factor in PL Game 5. You know, it's like, hey, I just genuinely don't know his sets. Potato might be just thinking, hey, I'm going to click Blastoise into not Kieran Black because he's not going to pick Kieran Black into Tarak, Victini, or Lever, which is a fair assumption. But this team set Ambiguity is really something. And basically what happens is, I think this Kieran Black actually beat both these and these mons, and Tarak is really risky when there's two Intim mons to destroy it, right? And basically what happens is Zao clicks Specs Kieran Black and wins the game. And I chose Specs Kieran Black because it actually is it was kind of a thing of the past, you know. People like steadily kind of used it, but it's definitely more of a thing in the past. But I decided, hey, let's bring it back now. It's actually not even that bad, like genuinely. And here it is. AV Lando, you know, covering Zard and all that. So yeah, that's what this team was. And so, you know, the Mawile could have been, there's a lot of things that could have been actually. Theoretically, it could have been punishment. Theoretically, it could have been punishment for Slowbro. It also theoretically, which would be better with Specs Lando than Specs Kieran Black. Specs Kieran Black kind of just beats Slowbro no matter what. Unless they Amnesia, which who the fuck would do that? And, this theoretically could also have been either SD or Taunt. Metal Burst is kind of likely. So, because of Genesect. So yeah, that's just an example of this team having a lot of ambiguous properties at preview. And so let's go into the actual results, or something that could feasibly happen. So this is, you know, the Derek squad, as people call it. It's kind of like the most standard ORAS team you can get at this point. But let's see how it matches up against this team. So what you should be thinking is, okay, if you actually look at this matchup here, there is genuinely, okay, let's assume this is actually not Ice Punch Metagross, because Ice Punch Metagross low-key beats this team, okay? Since this team is AV Lando, Specs Kieran Black, this team does lose to Ice Punch Metagross, but one of the big like pros of set Ambiguity is that they may think you're like a fast Specs Lando for Metagross. And honestly, set Ambiguity can get people to really just not click their 3-0s, which is honestly amazing. And that's why I like ambiguous teams later in a series. I mean, Mawile can kind of finesse it, but it's an uphill battle for sure. And so basically what you can see is, hey, this is Scarf Lando, which is not super common. I kind of just 3-0s this team. Unless it's Counter Zard, which I'm assuming it's not for this example. So this team has to be worrisome of a Scarf Landed 3-0, which is not too common of a set. I will say. I mean, it's like fairly common. You know, some people run it like every tour, I'd say. Like maybe once or twice, but it's generally not the thing that is a go-to for Lando. And so for this example, this person would probably have to assume, hey, I mean, this has to be either AV or I lose, right? Or Specs, obviously. So if you think about it, they're probably thinking, okay, well, so what on their team beats Zard? I'm gonna cover that. So if this is, you know, AV Lando, then they would go Greninja. And if this is Haban Kieran Black, then they can go Metagross, right? But the issue is that if you don't know which is a Zard coverer, then you legitimately cannot mid-ground with these two mons. You have to accurately guess, okay, this is this set, and I know if they're going to pick it or not. This is why I say Ambiguity is such a demon, because it is a weapon. It is an absolute weapon because people have to guess your team perfectly. Probably. I mean, they can also just guess wrong and then, you know, pick right in like a weird situation. But they gotta guess your team and guess what you're thinking, which is really, really hard in, you know, a high stakes tournament match to do both those things. That's why I don't like teams that, you know, okay, let's just say for example, I mean, I'm gonna, okay, what's an electric type? I'm just gonna look for one. Okay, well, I want to do Oras, so let me find Oras. Okay, I have an example. So let's just say Thunderous Therian with specs for Zard Y, and then maybe a foul play Slowbro for Zard X. This is for Y, this is for X, right? I don't like this because you have to guess if they are the specific Zard and perfectly guess what they're gonna go into, right? So I don't like this style of thing because it's too many assumptions, and I think that you're basically just going through way too many burdens that team preview that you should not really be going through. But that's kind of necessary if you're in a matchup like this. So yeah, that basically it is impossible to mid-ground this team with something like, hey, he's gonna go and think that beats Zard, but hey, you can't fucking do that because Specs Kieran Black and Haban both beat Greninja, and for this example, both AV and Specs Lando beat Metagross. So yeah. Next, I'm gonna go into another ambiguous team just to show you what that would look like. I built this, and they both have very similar teams. You know, Zard, Serp, and then potential. This is an absolute Zard beater. This is a potential Zard beater, and this also beats something like Keytran, and this beats Keytran too. So, at team preview, I'm gonna go really slow and hope I can. Okay, so Crucify went down to 5, and that is always concerning. But what is more noticeable is that he doesn't really know. I'm gonna go back to preview. How do you guess this team, right? Because okay, let's look at this. How does this team beat Altaria? Like maybe for example DD. It's kind of unclear how this team beats DD Altaria, right? A potential thing here is Toxic Zard Y, and a potential thing here is Banned Hacks. But Banned Hacks does not really make a ton of sense on this team. So if this was Banned Hacks, this would probably have to be AV Serp, because otherwise the team is going to lose to maybe, you know, a Scarf PZ, for example. But I mean, there could be Zard Y, which is even more, like, this team just reeks of ambiguity. It's hard to guess exactly, you know, all 3 of these sets. This could feasibly be AV or Leech Seed. This could be literally anything, and this can be something like Scarf, Band, or maybe Custap. So all of these mons have sets on sets, and the likelihood that you're gonna guess all 3 sets is very low. Basically what happens in this matchup specifically is that Haxorus is I mean, okay, you could say it's a 2.50. I think that's like the 1v1 mainer term for that. Basically, it 3-0s a lot of the time, and this is Scarf, and Crucify basically picks into this saying, hey, I think he's gonna click Hacks, might as well have Serp try to beat it, because if this is Scarf, then Hacks really like has it versus, or this is Scarf Hacks. Scarf Hacks is pretty great versus Zard, and it's good versus Tarak, and it's pretty good versus Serp. So he basically has to like struggle pick into Haxorus here. He doesn't even think about the other. I mean, he does think about it, but he doesn't really consider the other 2 mons because Serp is awful into both of these. So yeah, someone basically gets some decent RNG and then wins the game. No points even on PJab, but yeah. This is an example of a team that is pretty fucking ambiguous. So I'm just going to show a demonstration of like what it can feasibly be. So it could be AV, it could be AV Serp, and then I mean, okay, let's go likelihood. Likelihood, it's this, and then a Zard that tries to beat Mega Altaria, but it's not very clear how it does that. You know, maybe he's not even, maybe the builder's not even thinking about it. It's me, and I did think about Mega Altaria. But, you know, maybe it can be AV banned, because it'd be kind of strategic to run a banned Hackstars in a very important game, because your opponent is going to be only really thinking about the most common sets in like a high tense situation. So high tension, and yeah, it's very unclear if it's Zard X or Zard Y on this team, because Zard, both Zards can actually tech Megatar with like Toxic. Zard has to run like Toxic Roost, which is kind of bad, but it's still feasible. And what's also feasible is that the builder could be saying, hey, fuck it, I'm just gonna run Wisp Air / Zard Y and just hope it's not Confide, or hope I get a really good RNG versus Confide. And this could also be Zard X. If there's these two sets, maybe it's Spadef, maybe it's not. It's really hard to gauge what this team is at preview accurately in a really tense situation when you're thinking about a bunch of different things. And here's another Crucified team where it's like, I have no idea looking at this what the sets are. Like, all these mons have sets on sets. I was kind of leaning towards Zard Y and Habankia and Black, but it could also be sub DD. Oh, also something I didn't mention is that this could be sub DD Zard with Jolly for other Zards, because Jolly sub has just great odds versus damn near every other Zard that is not Jolly sub also. So yeah, or just Jolly one that attacks you turn 1 and wins the tie, you know, but that's not very common. Attacking turn 1 with Zard is not that common, like I said with Zards. But he actually ends up being X. This is just like a friendly game, like an Ela Banditor. I got smoked by him outraging hard turn 1. So yeah, basically I've went over a lot of situations where you could just be thinking about, hey, in this important tournament game, running an ambiguous team is great, because, you know, otherwise your opponent is not really going to be too worried at your team. You know, it's just a team. If it doesn't have 3-0, what's the big deal? But if they have ambiguity, then, or if you have ambiguity, it's like they're gonna be thinking about 1,000 different things during the game. If they're really, like, you know, thinking about a lot at preview, if they're one of those players. I mean, some people just click in, like, you know, 30 seconds, but that's not a lot of people these days. So let's take a look at a team that should probably be more ambiguous, if you ask me. We got 1A7 Fan versus Nick. No shade to Fan, but I'm about to roast him here because of the events that transpired. So basically, at this point in time, as I was talking about earlier, Specs Lando in PL was just popping up. Multiple teams were running it. So what I'm looking at is Lander Starigan plus 2 physical attackers. And what I, as a spectator, think is, hey dude, this is probably fucking Specs Lando, because there's 2 physical attackers, and if you're running a Specs Lando, it's very likely that you're also running Stone Edge Gyarados to patch up the Zard matchup, right? Because Specs Lando is not great versus Zard. You can run the Specs HP Rock and beat X. That's you know, a thing you can do. But that's not, you don't beat Y, so you're gonna be probably thinking about Y at preview or in the team builder. So I'm thinking this is DD Stone Edge. Oh, I kind of know it's DD Stone Edge. This is pretty obviously Specs Lando, and then hey, I lose to Kieran Black and Zard, so you know, DD Stone Edge, Gyarados, you know, patch those matchups up, and then a Metagross in the back for stuff like Specs Meloetta and Specs PC. And this kind of bites Fan in the ass, because even though the play that Nick makes is kind of just generally optimal, if you think about it, it kind of covers a lot. It covers like AV and Specs, but I mean, there's no real reason for it to be AV on this team. Theoretically, it could be anything because it's Lando T, but it's kind of obviously Specs. So Nick just regular Grass Knot says, or regular Amnesia says fuck it, and kind of catches this situation because it's so obvious at preview that this is Specs Lando with, you know, Lando in the first slot, 2 physical attackers in the next, that, hey man, this looks kind of Specs to me. And yeah, as I said earlier, this is kind of a catch-all play. I mean, Lando can feasibly run anything. He could run a set that beats, you know, regular Amnesia turn 1, but it's not likely because AV, Scarf, and Specs, which are like the only real sets in the meta right now, all lose to regular Grass or regular Amnesia. But this is basically the case of a very predictable team structure kind of biting fan in the ass, I'd say. So that's what I have to say about that. When it comes to building with that ambiguity, what I would say is you should probably try to make ambiguous teams first before it comes naturally, because it coming naturally is kind of just like, hey, I mean, this is kind of an accident, but I'm totally here for it type of thing, instead of a, you know, this is the whole point of the team at a high level. People, I mean, yeah, people like me try to make ambiguous teams on purpose, but, you know, it's not like the whole focal point of a team, like, this team needs to be ambiguous or else it is bad, you know. It's kind of a benefit that some teams have, you know. This team, not ambiguous at all. The only thing ambiguous about this team is, I wonder what Skullpede said it is. I mean, that doesn't matter because Skullpede sucks and loses to the entire metagame. It's an 0-3 here. But also you're wondering, hey, well, I wonder what the third move on Low Bunny is. And also I wonder how he beats. This might be another example of the, hey, I'm going to guess the Zard set, because Low Bunny beats... This is Scald though, so this would just like lose to Drum X a lot. I mean, whatever, dude, whatever. Yeah. So yeah, as I said, you know, you should probably work on making an ambiguous team first on purpose, and then after that, kind of slowly incorporating it into your building with, hey, I want my sets to not be obvious as shit. Because when you think about these two mons together, it's kind of obvious what they are. You don't really need AV Lando plus Gyarados. That's not necessary. Like, Scarf isn't either. They both have Intim, and they'd both be physical attackers that, you know, try to beat, you know, Zard, other stuff like that, right? That's very unnecessary. You don't need two mons that serve the exact same purpose. Like they even like look the same. Look at their poses. The tail in the back, looking forward, you know, menacingly. They're so similar. There's got to be a catch with these two mons, you know. I'm not saying like Lando Gyara is unusable, but it's very like, and there's another team that I built actually that was Jirachi over Metagross earlier in this PL. I don't know if anyone was aware of that. Like either of these two players were aware of that, but I wouldn't say that this type of style is good, because yeah, the novelty of Specs Lando wore off. You know, maybe regular Amnesia is not a thought in people's head if no one is considering Specs Lando, right? Because, you know, you don't want to get roasted by your teammate, or anyone really, if you Amnesia on a Lando T and they don't even run Specs. But now that Specs is in the metagame, you kind of got to consider that type of thing. So yeah, I think this is a pretty outdated team at this point. And it was made even worse by the fact that this set was obvious as shit at preview, right? But in SS, as I said earlier, in SS and DVP, you know, you can try to make your sets even more ambiguous than they already are, probably. But this is more of a like advanced technique that you kind of, I don't know. Maybe it's you should use mons with a bunch of sets. I mean, I already got into that, you know, use brokens, you know, use versatile shit. But I mean, it kind of, set ambiguity is kind of based in the fact that versatile mons in 1v1 are good, almost objectively, and especially when together. So, yeah, basically that's all I have to say about that. Another thing, now that I'm ending this, don't put your like quirky tech mon in the first slot. Come on, guys. Like, it's so obvious when a lot of players do this type of thing, man. The Specs Lando DD Garrus with Dunnage structure was even more like obvious when you think about the Specs Lando being in slot 1. Like, in case you guys don't know, slot 1, slot 2, slot 3. So basically, if you don't shuffle your sets, this is the first mon you add to your team, this is the second mon you add to your team, this is the third mon you add to your team, right? That is what is in your team, or your team builder and at team preview. So I recommend not having your obvious like tech be in the first slot, you know. Shuffle your shit around, you know, stuff like that. But yeah, that's all I have to say about Ambiguity. It is an absolute weapon in certain matchups. It's a weapon in high tension situations. It's a weapon when your opponent is someone who likes to think a lot of preview. If you're running like no thought, head empty, insta clicks at preview, yeah, say Ambiguity is not going to be that like helpful, but it still can help in almost any matchup. It's definitely a good thing to have most of the time, because a confused opponent is probably not too hard to beat. I mean, it is Mons where, you know, a lot of the time the worst player can win. I mean, not a lot of the time, but, you know, a good amount of the time it is possible for the worst player to win in 1v1, right? It's just fucking 1v1. Not the, like, this is not the fucking NBA, right? But yeah, just think about when you're building, hey, what are my opponents going to think of my sets? You know, stuff like that. And I highly recommend building ambiguous teams on purpose, and then from that you can kind of make it a little more natural in your building. That's kind of what I did. But yeah.